And I'm Shirley, and I'm really passionate about the whole area about how nature can support your mental health and well-being. And I think the title of the lecture, as you can see here, this is one of the trees from the grounds. And before this talk, I spent a couple of hours kind of walking around and getting some beautiful pictures of the grounds here, because often, you know, in this hospital we have different therapies and we have different approaches, but the grounds that we're on and the natural environment is really also part of the healing when people come to John of God's. And it's really important that we acknowledge, you know, the role of nature, you know, in relation to supporting people's mental health. And I think we've really seen that during COVID-19, when people were locked, you know, in their houses, how important nature became for their own mental health. You know, when we had the 2K restrictions, when we had the 5K restrictions, we really saw how people's gardens, how people's green spaces, their parks really help them. You know, they're nearby nature. But what we also saw was, we saw the people living in maybe high-rise flats in areas of great kind of deprivation and poverty, and the impact that had, you know, without being able to go to see some beautiful natural spaces. So this is an area I've been passionate about for the last 15 years. And one of the reasons I'm so interested in it as a social worker is that right throughout my social work career of almost 20 years or so, you know, people often spoke about times of great like trauma or tragedy or grief, how nature supported them, you know, in terms of losing somebody they loved. They might have had a special place in nature they went to, they might have had a special tree, they might have had, you know, the walk by the sea really kind of supported them. So for me, you know, social work is person and environment, and we often forget the natural environment. So that's why I'm doing the talk tonight, and thanks for the opportunity again to speak. So we're going to focus on kind of three different areas. So just around the area of kind of nature connection and mental health. So what nature connection is, it's not just about, you know, walking through nature. It's about developing a relationship with the natural world that can really support people's resilience in times of distress and need. You know, how the natural world can support positive mental health, you know, to keep us staying well and healthy. And also we need to look at, you know, the impact of kind of the climate crisis in relation to mental health, because, you know, what we're seeing now is obviously there's a lot of climate breakdown in terms of floods, in terms of, you know, earthquakes, in terms of various climate issues for people, and there's a lot of suffering as a result. So we have to kind of acknowledge the role of that in relation to mental health at present, and maybe for the future, especially in relation to our younger people. So there's a picture of the grounds, and I'll use pictures of the grounds right throughout the presentation just to showcase the really beautiful natural surroundings that we really are blessed in this hospital to have. So St John of God Hospital sits on 22 acres. I just want to get the name of the gardener as well here, just to give him a mention. Acres of beautiful gardens, which include wild and manicured spaces with abundant native mature trees, and there's really rich biodiversity throughout. And again, John of God's sustainable healthcare is really a key focus in the hospital, evidenced by the Green Healthcare Award in 2020. So that we have a sustainable committee in the hospital. We're always trying to promote, you know, active transport, what we can do to support the environment. So that's really important. And also Mark Kelly, he heads up the gardening team here in the hospital with his team, and they really do fantastic work right throughout the year. So I just want to give them a mention as well. So these are just some of the pictures. Some of you might know the grounds, other of you mightn't, but you can really see the kind of diversity that we have here in the hospital, and it really is amazing, you know, as a staff member to be able to go out at lunchtime and to walk around the grounds. It really helps, you know, my mental health, and often the staff would use it as well, and the patients would be out walking and interacting with nature as well. So it's important to kind of showcase that as well. So again, you know, because my background is social work, you know, I'm really coming from this talk from an eco-social work lens. So people might have heard of eco-psychology, they might have heard of eco-philosophy, but eco-social work is not really spoken about. So as I mentioned, the definition of social work, traditional social work, is person and environment. It usually is, you know, people in their family, people in their community, people in society, but often people you know, they're part of the greater natural world, you know, so we often see that people living in better socioeconomic areas have better access to really good parks. And for me, that's a real issue, that regardless of where you live, regardless of your postcode, regardless of your financial situation, people should really have access to beautiful, wild and natural spaces. So the eco-social work lens is about the interconnectedness of all life in our ecosystems, and we promote the well-being of all. So there's a big movement now in terms of, you know, we know about human rights, but nature's rights, you know, and New Zealand, Australia are really championing that, about the rights of rivers not to be polluted, you know, the rights of mountains not to be mined. So I think that we are part of nature, and we've become disconnected from it, and that has caused a lot of stress and anxiety in the kind of modern day living. So deep ecology is the theoretical foundation of eco-social work. Again, that the person and the environment are not separate. So again, you know, we often see it if somebody's put in a hospital room with, you know, no plants, just grey, no window, it can be very distressing for them. And we'll see in terms of the hospital here how they bring in nature into not just the outdoors but the indoors as well, because it really does have an impact. You know yourself, if you're in an area where there's no life, it can be very depressing. So it's really important to understand that the person and the environment are not separate. And that environmental justice is at the core of the practice. And again, this is where social work, you know, really comes into its own, that we speak up for the rights of people from maybe poorer areas, you know, to protect parks. So many parks are now being, you know, built on. Obviously we need houses, which is very important, but we also need green spaces for people to be able to go and relax and sit and unwind. So we can see these two images here, you know, that our environment really impacts our well-being. I don't know from these two pictures which one would you prefer to be in, but you know, the one on the left is that's Mount Usher Gardens in Wicklow. So again, I know when I go there, the sound of the water is very relaxing, the colours of the trees, the movement, it's really, really beautiful. And then the second picture, traffic. Sometimes we spend a lot of time in traffic, and that can really increase, you know, the stress levels in our body, which can impact our mood. So we really have to understand, no matter where we work or where we live, that our environment really does impact our well-being. So these are just some of the examples. Does anyone recognize this place here? It's the coffee shop. Okay, so this is the coffee shop here. This is upstairs in one of our outdoor spaces, or in the office, just waiting outside the office in the addiction ward. And then this is one of the corridors to some of the wards. So you can really see that we bring plants into the hospital. We want to bring natural light, and that concept is biophilic design, which is bringing nature in. And it's really, really important, you know, for maybe the patients that can't get out, the patients that you know, they mightn't be able to leave the ward for whatever reason, that we have to be able to bring in nature in for their mental well-being. So in terms of how the landscape has shaped you, so everyone here that has come tonight will have, you know, grown up in different areas. For some people, they might have grown up in the city. For some, they might have grown up by the coast. For some, they might have grown up in the mountains, you know, but your landscape really kind of shapes you. And this is where I grew up. This is Birr Castle. It's literally 5 minutes walk from my house. I grew up in the Midlands, and I spent the majority of my time down in Birr Castle. I came from a large family, which there was no, it was quite stressful, and there was no peace given a large family. So I spent a lot of my time in nature. So I knew from an early age how nature could support my own well-being. And that's why I'm excited about this work. So this is a little quote, John O'Donoghue. I don't know if you know the late John O'Donoghue, who's a fantastic philosopher and theologian and writer, but he really speaks about the natural world, how we're not separated from it. And he said, the ancient rhythms of the earth have insinuated themselves into the rhythms of the human heart. The earth is not outside us, it is within the clay from where the tree of the body grows. So again, you know, spirituality and nature goes hand in hand here. And often when people are in times of distress or suffering, spirituality is very important, and they can get some of that solace through nature, through poetry as well. And this is a beautiful, I don't know if any of you know Adair Manor. I had the pleasure of visiting at one stage just to see the grounds, and it's a lovely natural sculpture as well. So you can really see how, you know, natural art can lift people's mood, can really brighten the space as well. So again, you know, the concept of interdependency, you know, we are human nature. You know, often people forget that, you know, we're human, but we're actually human nature. And what does that mean? And again, often, you know, poetry or quotes is a good way of expressing, you know, some things. And Andy Goldsworthy, he's a beautiful UK sculptor and environmentalist, and he says so beautifully, you know, we often forget that we are nature. Nature is not something separate from us. So when we say we have lost our connection to nature, we have lost our connection to ourselves. So, you know, we might see that in places where maybe some of the local trees are being felled, you know, if they're a danger and they need to be felled, you know, some of the communities really get distressed about it, or, you know, where your local park is being built on, you know, places you might have walked for 20 years. So it really, really affects people in terms of their space and that connection. And I think the image is quite powerful, really, you know, that we are nature. So also in terms of the health research, there's these concepts of One Health and eco-health. So basically what they mean is that the environmental health, the health of, you know, animals, zoological health and human health, they're all interconnected. And we saw that during COVID. You know, we saw that, you know, with COVID-19 and with the pandemic, that it really does affect, everything is interconnected, and it affects our health as well. So Thomas Berry, a cultural historian, has a great quote, and it's quite profound. He says, you know, you can't have healthy people on a sick planet. And I think we're starting to see that. I mean, even if we think about, you know, the waters that, you know, some of the waters, the rivers are polluted, but there's great hope and optimism here as well. It's really important that obviously some of this can be hard hitting, but there's fantastic work being done by different conservation groups, you know, different local activists to try and promote and restore the natural environment. So again, if you're interested in this area, there's a fantastic book. It's a really easy read by Lucy Jones. She was a journalist, and it's Why Our Minds Need the Wild. And Lucy talks about, you know, nature is not a luxury. Its presence or absence creates and causes different health outcomes for different groups of people. And again, that's supported by research. You know, the better access to good quality parks can really support the health of the local population as well. So we're going to have a look at, you know, the kind of difference between nature contact, which is like walking in nature, and also nature connectedness. Now, again, I'm very excited about this area. There's a whole research group in the University of Derby dedicated to nature connectedness, and it's run by psychologists and researchers. So again, it's becoming an area that's growing in interest. So it goes beyond contact with nature. So obviously, you know, walking in nature, physical activity is really key, you know, outdoors. You know, playing, like we have the tennis courts here, we've got pitch and putt outdoors, people can walk. But, you know, connected to nature goes beyond just walking through nature. So nature connectedness is a recognised psychological construct, one that describes an individual's sense of their relationship with the natural world. And I mean, the natural world can include your pet. So for example, when I was coming to work this morning, I saw an older gentleman walking his dog, or the dog was walking him, and both of them were limping along, the dog and the older gentleman. But I thought, isn't that fantastic? He's walking his dog, but his dog is really getting him out of the house and walking him, you know. And the natural world includes animals and pets, which can be so important, especially for older people in terms of loneliness. You know, a cat or a dog can really help them get out of bed in the morning, get out of the house, you know, give them purpose, and also gives them interaction, social interaction with other people that they meet. So this is our emotional attachment and beliefs about our inclusion within nature. These aspects affect our being, how we experience the world, our emotional response, our attitudes and our behaviours towards nature. And again, For some people, they have a stronger connection to nature. For others, they don't, and that's fine. Some people want to go to shopping centres instead of going to the mountains, and that's absolutely fine. So the most important thing is, you know, whatever's relevant to you, whatever you connect with in terms of your well-being. But you can really kind of enhance your nature connectedness by doing some activities that I will show you. I'll go through at the end, and you have your 5 main takeaways as well, which will help promote your nature connectedness. Okay, so again, just to give you a minute or so, just to think for yourselves in terms of, you know, your own connection to nature, and to think about, you know, what was one of your own kind of favorite nature experiences, if you think for a second. So again, in terms of relationship to nature can be really important. And does anyone recognize this picture? Yeah, okay, yeah. So this is a really beautiful story, and this man's name is John Byrne. He was a homeless gentleman on the streets of Dublin, and in 2011 he had his rabbit, and I have his rabbit's name, Barney, which is Barney there. And unfortunately somebody came and threw his rabbit into the Liffey, and he went in after the rabbit, and he rescued the rabbit, and then he had to be rescued, but he got some award, you know, from Dublin City Council or something. But it was a really profound story, you know, because I think the whole nation, you know, it was so beautiful, because he said that this is his dog as well, this is Lily, and he said that his animals were his family, you know, and they kept him well out on the streets, you know. So it was a really beautiful story, but it just shows you, you know, the profound connection to a pet or an animal, how it can really help somebody who's homeless maybe and mightn't have a lot. And another, just in terms of the relationship to nature, this is a really lovely story, you know. So in Australia, some people might have heard about it in 2013. So Melbourne, Australia, city officials set up email addresses for specific trees, so locals could report issues like dangerous branches, you know, overhead branches. Instead, people sent thousands of love letters to trees. Such as one that said, "You must get these messages all the time. You're such an attractive tree." So again, there's a whole book written about this, that they thought that just, you know, people would write in complaining about things, but people had the most amazing stories about trees, and they had the email of the specific tree so they could write to them, you know. So again, it just shows you how important trees are to some people. It really are. And it's not just the emotional or spiritual, but it's also in terms of the physical health as well, in terms of reducing air pollution, in terms of reducing heat, in terms of, you know, promoting good soundscape. So a lot of benefits there. So just to put up some kind of mindful moments in terms of different images in nature, and, you know, as you look at some of these images, maybe just any words that come to mind, just if you wanted to call out a word or two when you look at the image.
Tranquility.
Tranquility, yeah.
Serene.
Serene, yeah. Yeah. Great.
Wonder.
Wonder, yeah. We'll try a couple. This one. Beauty, yeah, yeah. Color, yeah. Diversity, yeah. Vibrant. Serene, yeah. Tranquil, yeah. Nourishing for me, I think, with the water, yeah. This little guy. Yeah. Any words for this little guy, girl? Yeah. Cute. What's that? Wild, yeah. Beautiful. And we see some foxes around the hospital as well, you know, it's lovely to see them out, you know. This one. Yeah. It's real kind of awe, really, isn't it? Awe-inspiring, this one for me, you know, so, yeah. And again, you know, different images or different settings will evoke different emotions. You know, for some people, they want to go to the sea. For others, they want to be in a meadow. For others, they want to be in the city centre. You know, so it just depends on what you like, you know, in terms of your own mental health and well-being. But that's a very kind of deep, reflective, contemplative place, you know. So in terms of some of the research around nature connection, again, at the University of Derby, they're doing some fantastic research on how can they enhance people's connection to nature, because they know if your connection to nature is enhanced, it's better for your well-being, for your emotional, for your psychological health, for your spiritual health, for your physical health. And they came up with these 5 pathways, and it's really good because you can use these 5 pathways in developing any programs for people in terms of nature and well-being. And I would have used a lot of these pathways in my previous work, and hopefully we can use some of them in the hospital as well in terms of the different patient groups. So the pathways were around, you know, senses, around like emotion, around compassion, around meaning, and around beauty. So we'll just go through some of those pathways. So this is beauty. People connect to nature through beauty. I actually took this picture in Avoca in Kilmechanic. It was just the leaves had fallen off the trees. I just thought it pure art, really, you know. And this is a picture in Iceland I took with the sky. But again, it's real kind of beauty in terms of beauty can help us stop in our tracks. And sometimes when people experience immense suffering or immense tragedy or immense trauma, the importance of beauty through art, through music, through nature, you know, through spirituality is really, really important for them. Now, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, we know that. So beauty could be something like a dead tree, a gnarled tree, or it could be, you know, a barren landscape. Whatever people think is beautiful to them. We're not prescribing only, you know, flowers and all that is beautiful. It's really important that, you know, we keep an open mind in terms of what is beautiful, you know. And then meaning. This is a picture, I don't know if you recognise it, in Glendalough. I think it's just really, really beautiful in terms of the richness of the biodiversity there. But one of the pathways that we can connect to nature is through meaning. So again, when we walk in nature, maybe you might be doing your walk at lunchtime or walk in the evenings, you know, sometimes we don't look up or we don't look down or we don't look around. We're kind of going from A to B. But often there's a lot of symbolism, you know, in nature. We might see a tree, we might think of our own family tree. We might see a stream, some of it is stagnant, some of it is moving fast. You might think about an area in our own lives, you know, where that is. We might go into a forest and see a lot of kind of dead stumps, you know, with new life growing on them. So there's such richness in nature and symbolism that can really support people in terms of their mental health. Emotion. This is one of the squirrels in the grounds. So again, people connect to nature through emotion, and where this is really important is the likes of maybe people in nursing homes or older people that can't get out, and you can talk to them about you know, what landscape they grew up in, what parts of the natural environment they used to really enjoy. You can bring kind of nature in. You can talk about nature stories, nature memories. So emotion is really, really important to connect people to nature as well. Compassion. So these are some of the pictures I took from the Facebook group on the hospital. So this is one of the therapy dogs, I think, that comes into the hospital. I don't know his name or her name. But again, you can see that they bring such joy to the patients. And then this is one of the rabbits. I think that Janissa, our adolescent unit, have here. So again, the importance of bringing animals into the hospital as well is really important. And, you know, compassion, not just for the natural world, but also compassion towards yourself. You know, people are very hard on themselves, you know, why did I do this? Why did I not do that? You know, I messed this up. The reality is, you know, life is very tough. People have gone through a lot of things, and we really need to show a lot more compassion towards ourselves as well as others. And for some it can be hard to practice, but nature can really, really support compassion. Senses. So these are some of the gardens outside. You can see the beautiful gardens and the lavender and the different textures. So we can connect to nature through the 5 senses. So again, you know, when we're going on our walk, when we're out in our garden, just think about, you know, what you can see. So for example, I went on a little walk before I came in here just to ground myself. You could see the beautiful movement of the trees. You could see the light, you know, going through the trees. You could see the movement of the clouds. So what can you touch, you know, the different textures in nature, the feeling of the breeze on your skin, what you can smell, you know, the different kind of smells in the garden, even the damp earth in the morning, or, you know, picking up some of the forest floor is amazing to smell, or by the beach, the seaweed, you know, what you can taste. Never taste anything in nature if you don't know what it is. It's really important. You know, we went by a mushroom hunt yesterday, and we thought, if you don't know what mushrooms are there, don't touch any of them, you know. And then here as well, you know, the different bird song, you know, so no matter where you are, you can hear maybe the wood pigeon, you can hear the noise of the, you know, the sound of the seagulls, you can hear the sound of the gentle breeze. You can also hear the sound of construction and cars, and that's okay, because that's the real world we live in. You know, we can't just have a beautiful natural soundscape unless we're in the middle of nowhere. So again, you know, we live in the real world. You know, we try and kind of drown out some of the other sounds and bring some of the other sounds to the fore. So this is just some of the research in terms of nature, contact and connectedness in relation to psychological well-being. So we see that exposure to natural environments are associated with higher levels of life satisfaction, you know, reduced anxiety as well. And the reduced anxiety is interesting because the part of the brain that causes rumination, there's some research that showed people that walked in kind of green leafy areas with trees, and then people that walked in very kind of urban areas, and the part of the brain that is responsible for rumination was really calmed, you know, when they were walking amongst the trees, and that helps reduce anxiety. Also less depressive symptoms and the development of personality traits such as, you know, openness, and also nature connectedness is associated with better autonomy, you know, purpose in life, meaning, you know, self-acceptance. We're a little bit more gentle on ourselves. We're not as hard, you know, positive relationships to others, because we're kind of less stressed. If we spend time outside, it helps reduce all the stressors. And then environmental mastery. So these are some of the benefits. And again, this is this is a beautiful water feature we have on the grounds, which is really lovely. And some of the benefits of nature, contact and connection, again, that enhanced sensory awareness that gentleman mentioned about the senses, you know, when he goes to his place of rest, you know, he really engages his senses. You know, often, you know, we might think we're always looking for new adventures far afield, but the most powerful thing is to learn to see your back garden with new eyes, to learn to see your local park with new eyes, you know, to really appreciate what you have on your doorstep. And that can be through sensory awareness and mindfulness. Nature supports playfulness and creativity and spontaneity. Again, you have a sense of being away from the everyday, you know, everyday life. You have a sense of, you know, being away from the kind of pressures at home, maybe in beautiful spaces, you know, like Powerscourt, like, you know, Glendalough, like Mount Usher, but also in your local parks as well. Sometimes people don't report it in their gardens because all they see is weeds, and they have a lot of work to do, you know. Again, it enhances emotional regulation. Again, if you think about, if you have a lot of anger and you go to somewhere maybe where there's big waves in terms of reducing some of that kind of anger, that kind of emotional intensity, ecological identity or attachment, that we have a place within the bigger picture, you know, the bigger family. So for me, that's really important, that I just don't feel part of like my family at home with my brothers and sisters and siblings and all that. So yes, it provides a safe space as well for some people. So again, not everybody, as I said, some people they don't have that connection to nature, and it mightn't be a safe place for them, and they want to be somewhere else, and that's absolutely fine. You know, it's really important that whatever works for people, you know, helps regulate the nervous system. So again, what that's about is, you know, modern day life, there's a lot of traffic noise, there's a lot of stimulation with bright lights and everything, and when we're out in nature it can be quite soothing because it's natural colours, it's natural soundscapes, reduces the stress, it cultivates compassion, acceptance and gratitude. There's a humility there, you know, we're only a tiny speck in the bigger picture of things. It's a protective factor in promoting resilience and enhancing coping, and we really saw that during the pandemic, where nature really was, you know, people's resilience really you know, strengthened because of that, and it promotes contemplation and reflection. You know, maybe some of the deeper issues, or to get some clarity in life, we have places where we can go to reflect on. So some of the pathways linking green and blue spaces to positive health is directly to restorative environments. So again, we know like healing gardens, just being in quiet spaces. Indirectly through opportunities for social contact. I mean, this can't be this can't be overestimated or can't be mentioned enough. You know, social contact is essential for people to stay well. And I think Amy Watchcorn, the psychologist, talked about loneliness last week or the first week, and she would have spoken about that a lot. But again, social isolation is very detrimental for your mental health. So any opportunity for social gatherings through group walking or hikes or anything like that is very good, and indirectly through physical activity outdoors. So in terms of some of the theories underpinning nature connection and well-being, because again, you know, this work is all evidence-based, the attention restoration theory looks at how nowadays we're all stuck in front of screens, you know, especially the younger generation, and our attention is so focused that we're exhausted. We get this thing called cognitive fatigue. So when we're out in nature, we can watch the movement of the trees, we can watch the movement of the clouds, no matter where you are, and it kind of calms everything down in terms of soft fascination. So that's really interesting. And also the biophilia hypothesis, which means we are, you know, we've come from nature. Once we try and separate ourselves out, it can have detrimental impacts on our mood. And then stress reduction theory, again, when we're in high stimulation environments, you know, like bright lights, like a lot of noise, it can really stress us out. And when we're in kind of soothing areas, it can relax us. So just some of the other areas around stress vulnerability. What we know is in terms of some mental health diagnosis, the more stress in people's life, the more likely they are to maybe relapse, you know, and that's where a lot of the research on nature is around stress reduction. So it really is a kind of helps to prevent relapse, you know. Around emotional regulation, we touched on that, opportunities for social contact, gentle physical activity, and also encourages emotional expression. So sharing and talking, you know. So some of the, you know, if I would do kind of walks in nature with groups, I'd often say to them, what are you noticing? You know, do you want to share a little bit? And people, you know, share a lot, and it really helps kind of bond the group, you know. Also, being out in nature, like the stars, it gave opportunities for awe and transcendental experiences. So what that means is that you're outside yourself. You're a little bit removed from everyday life. Reduces rumination, like we mentioned with anxiety, helps gain perspective and clarity. We go out into nature with a problem and we come back with an answer, you know, and we spend time by ourselves. And we just come back, and there's a sense of kind of inner knowing. There's a sense of, you know, things make sense. And that's often when things quieten down, you know, we get our own kind of inner clarity. Helps improve sleep, which is a big one. Again, the blue light in the morning, the circadian rhythms is really important for that. And it's also a supportive environment because there's not a lot of demands on people in terms of maybe social interactions. So these are some different nature-based interventions. We have some of them in the hospital, like the Green Gym, you know, which is the kind of physical activity outdoors, you know, on different equipment. Therapeutic horticulture as well, in terms of growing in polytunnels. Animal-assisted therapy, you know, like bringing in the animals into the hospital, could be equine therapy. Ecotherapy and forest therapy is really kind of mindfulness practices outdoors. Nature-based expressive art is working with the creative arts in nature, and then healing and sensory gardens again, you know, can be so important. And some of the kind of key features again is that you really immerse yourself in nature. It's sensory engagement, and you can be kind of reflective, and you focus on the relationship aspect between people and nature. And also there's the whole area of research on psychoneuroimmunology, which means that our nervous system is connected to our moods, is connected to our immune system. So, I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to go into that too much, but it's an area of study where everything is connected, you know, things are not separate. And slowing down and rest and restoration. So these are some of the good qualities in the natural environment. So again, proximity to water. For some people, they find that quite soothing. You know, natural light, especially the early morning blue light, if you can get out early. Calming sounds, you know, of streams or waves. You can also bring some of those in, you know, into your house through apps. You know, clean with no pollution. I don't think there's anywhere now on the planet where you can go where there's no pollution. You know, even the Arctic, you know, has plastics. Naturalist and no human impact. So again, these are some of the aspects. So again, the microbes in the soil, there's some research in terms of the impact or the connection between your gut health and your mental health again. And there's microbes in the soil that they're researching in terms of some of that gut bacteria that can promote. The phytoncides in trees, that's the natural compounds that some trees give off. They're like essential oils. There's a lot of research now that how that kind of reduces the stress in the body. Again, just the clean air, the natural soundscape is so healing. The sunlight is so important because we spend so much time indoors. Actually getting out into the bright light is important. The optimal colour mix, you know, the browns, the greens, the colours, and also the fractal patterns in things like shells and branches. You know, it's a repetitive pattern that people's brain just kind of relaxes, you know, when they see it. And just some of the international nature-based initiatives. We have one in Ireland, which is it's won a number of awards. It's called Woodlands for Health. I don't know if anyone has heard of that. So it's a fantastic initiative run through Mental Health Ireland and Coillte and Get Ireland Walking. And it's basically a 12-week programme for people experiencing mild and moderate mental health difficulties. And it's run in a lot of the areas in Ireland. We have one in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown, we have one in Wicklow, and it's really fantastic, you know, to promote positive mental health. NHS Forests is an organisation that promote green space in nature, how staff can access green space around hospitals, around, you know, clinics, and how patients can use the green space as well. Healthy Parks, Healthy People and Parks RX, they're all basically doctors giving prescriptions to people spending time in the natural parks. The forest therapy basis in Japan and Korea, they're specific forests that have infrastructure, so people can go, they can get their stress levels measured before and after the forest, and it's really good outcomes. And also doctors in Shetland Island are promoting like a dose of nature, so spending time outside. You know, we don't want to medicalise nature, but it's good when it comes from a doctor. People often listen, you know, which is good. So I'm just going to finish up. There are just a couple of quotes, but I just want to just some of I did a 6-week program for adults experiencing stress, and some of the quotes from that was that this lady, I definitely feel the connection to nature very healing because it's time out for myself. It slows me down, body and mind. I feel part of the forest even though I don't live in it, and that's like being loved. So again, you can really kind of see that connection to nature. So just a bit about climate change and mental health. So again, we know that climate change is really impacting people's mental health. We know that certain groups are disproportionately at risk from climate change, including people with pre-existing mental health conditions. And we know it can lead to more emotional distress and the development of new mental health conditions. And the World Health Organization really recommends that we have to integrate climate change considerations into policies and programs for mental health to better prepare and respond to the climate crisis. So that's really to work with people to prepare them maybe for, you know, the future in terms of when the climate starts to kind of break down in terms of floods and things like that. You know, this is the reality. It's happening in some countries. You know, we're quite shielded in Ireland, but you know, for the future generations, it's going to be more and more important that that's integrated into mental health care. And some of the kind of examples is around stress reactions, you know, can lead to intense emotional suffering, people losing their houses, people losing their neighbourhoods, people being displaced, and the chronic distress can lead to sleep disorders, which can, you know, influence physical illness. And it's often the most deprived, the poorer areas or the poorer countries are more impacted, you know, which again is the whole environmental justice movement. So helplessness, fear and grief, it's a real loss, you know, can lead to a lot of distress for some people, losing personally important places. So the good news is that there's a lot of interventions, you know, that we can use in terms of eco-anxiety and eco-distress now, in terms of cognitive interventions, working with thoughts, in terms of, you know, existential meaning-focused interventions, fostering hope and optimism through activism, in terms of like the emotion-focused interventions around focusing on emotion regulation, in terms of self-care with kind of creativity, and then ecotherapies, you know, connecting people to nature. So it's really a new area of research, but it's really interesting, and I think it's going to be, it's going to come more to the fore. So just the last five minutes of finishing, how to kind of build resilience, you know, from the natural world. Again, nature can help us become more self-aware, you know, in terms of support and reflection and solitude and silence. You know, we can learn gratitude to, you know, be grateful for different things we have in nature, and also patience, that we learn to work with the rhythm of nature. You know, nature doesn't hurry for anyone. Nature has its own rhythm, like own seasons, and often, you know, we think we should be in the summer season all the time, go, go, go. But the reality is we really need to listen to the rhythms of nature, slow down, you know, learn to accept life for what it is instead of wishing it was different. You know, that's where intense suffering is always, you know, when you're struggling with the here and now, when you're struggling with the reality, when you're fighting against it. And again, just giving us clarity and perspective. So some of the kind of lessons from nature, again, you know, going back to your roots. So asking yourself, you know, what are your ideal conditions to thrive? You know, what do I need today? What can I support my well-being today? You know, can I get out in nature for 10 or 15 minutes? You know, do I need access to a window? You know, do I need to bring a plant in? You know, do I need to get light? So what you need in terms of your conditions to thrive. And also the experience of awe, you know, just that you can gain perspective. Often, if I'm really struggling with something, I might go to the beach with the crashing waves, and that can help me gain perspective that I'm just a tiny speck in the bigger picture. Bend like the branches, you know, learn to adapt and be flexible. That's really important, you know, especially in modern day life. There's a lot of stuff coming at us. And attune to the rhythms of nature. So this is a great quote. So rest is not idleness, and to lie sometimes in the grass under a tree on a summer's day, listening to the murmur of the water, watching the clouds float across the sky, is by no means a waste of time. I think that's fantastic, because we've kind of lost the art of idleness, you know, lost the art of doing nothing, which we really need to restore ourselves. And nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. So again, there's such, you know, profound wisdom in nature that can support our mental health, you know, and embracing change. We see change all the time in nature, you know, it's the acceptance around that. So some of the practices, and you'll see in your handout, I've included them in the kind of 5 key takeaways. Noticing 3 good things in nature. You can journal about them, you know, every day, you know, the song of the blackbird, the colour, you know, the movement of the trees, you know, whatever it is to notice. 120 minutes nature contact a week. So get out at least 20 minutes a day, if you can, into nature. It'll help keep you well. You know, find somewhere in nature where you can sit, where you can have some space. Bring nature in terms of like essential oils, nature photography, plants, water features. That will really help keep you well. And ask nature for support, you know, when you're struggling. You know, go out and ask nature for support. Also the nature visualizations that gentleman has mentioned. Birdsong or audio apps. There's lots of things now in terms of bringing nature in, and gratitude journals or mindful activities in nature. There's so much there that you can see. So just to finish up, just a little quote from John again, whose work is really inspiring. So I would love to live like a river flows, carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. So again, it's a really gentle way to live, really, isn't it? So hopefully you've enjoyed the talk, and I might hand you over to Grania for questions, I think.